This is Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue, the latest title in the Hello Neighbor series, and the first in VR, that places you in the shoes of a group of children trying to break into a neighbor's house in search of your friend who's been held captive. It's a little creepy, I know. Regardless, this releases May 25th, 2023 for the Quest 2, PSVR 2, and PCVR headsets for roughly $30 US, and for this review, we checked out the Quest 2 and PSVR 2 versions of the game. It's one part puzzler, one part stealth, and one part mystery, which is awesome in theory, though many of the flat games in this series have released a mixed reception, so let's see if being in VR can push this franchise into greatness. Hello party people, Ryan for the VR Grid here, and before we get to it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment with your thoughts on this release. If you can't get enough VR talk, join us live Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for the Virtual Boys podcast, where we talk all things VR. Now, on with the review. I honestly hadn't heard of this franchise until Sony announced this game late last year. From what I saw, it looked interesting as I enjoy puzzlers and love stealth games, especially in VR. The premise here is a little odd to say the least, as you play as one of 5 children in their attempts to rescue their friend who's been abducted by a weird guy who lives in an even weirder house. What ensues is a puzzle that requires you to jump from kid to kid as you slowly unlock new routes and mysteries, and when it works, it's good fun, but when it doesn't, it can be frustrating. A very brief introductory stage takes place in the backyard and lets you mess around with the various toys each kid has, like a bat, slingshot, and magnifying glass, before tossing you into the first stage, which tasks you with sneaking into the old man's house and acts as a tutorial, fleshing out the various obstacles you'll have to contend with. You'll learn how to use your two-way radios to hop from kid to kid, as each of them will only be able to access different sections of the house, with many doorways being blocked by locked gates that only the man has keys for. This is essentially the core of the game, as you'll have to try and discover, access, and unlock other areas of the house, to access more areas of the house, to access more areas of the house, and so on and so forth. It's here where I stumbled, as I almost immediately forgot some very key mechanics that held me up at the game's onset. I'm honestly not sure if it's poor game design or my own stupidity, but I struggled in the beginning thanks in large part to the fact that I forgot that each kid has their own special toy to help get them around the house. I think this is in large part due to the fact that the radio and toy are positioned on your invisible chest a little too low and a little too close to you, that they aren't in sight unless you look directly down at them. Once I clued into that, unraveling the mysteries of this house became easier, but in no way is it easy. I fully admit that my own stupidity got in the way at the beginning, but I don't think all my difficulties fall on just myself, as on more than a few occasions, it seemed like I was just guessing at solutions in a game that let me experiment where I shouldn't. I shoved a crowbar through a hole in a wall, only to have it disappear where I left it and not respawn until I'd quit and reloaded the game. This happened with a key I didn't know where to use, where reloading my game had it respawn back on the man, forcing me to wait impatiently before I could get to it again. The man will wander the house, and you do need to avoid him because if he catches you, actually, nothing too dire happens. You just end up back in control of the kid in the treehouse, where you can choose which kid you want to control again. I'd argue the lack of stakes here does make failure almost moot, but the number of times I was caught early on just trying to figure out the game has me thankful that there were no real consequences, as I'd almost given up, not caring whether I was caught, in favor of just trying to make any progress. I'm done whining about that though for now, as once I did start to figure out the game loop, I enjoyed the game much more, hopping from kid to kid and working together to slowly gain access to more and more of the house. It's in those moments when solutions were falling into place and I felt like I was making headway that the game became quite fun. Unfortunately, at numerous times, I did hit that wall where I couldn't find the missing item I needed to move forwards, casting me back into that trial and error type puzzle solving that typically yielded little result until I had my next aha moment of clarity. For those who enjoy such things, there are coins hidden throughout the game that when found can be placed in a birdie bank back in the treehouse for some kind of reward. I don't know, I haven't found them all yet. Also in that treehouse is a manual save button, though I found the autosave function to be reliable, so much so that I often forgot to save on my own. Avoiding the old man can be fun, as there are a few hiding places that help keep you out of sight, with the most important ones being the closets, which allow you a decent view of the room you're in, and also act as spawn points for each child. For the most part, I found hiding to be fair, though on a few occasions, I did feel like the man shouldn't have seen me when he did, though as I said, almost no progress is lost should you get caught. According to the developers, the game will take anywhere from 3 to 9 hours to beat, with myself landing closer to that middle mark at 6 hours. It's worth noting the lack of comfort options, as outside of an automatic height adjustment and adjustable or removable blinders, there aren't any others, and sadly, you can only click turn or use the teleport option in combination with a thumbstick to move, and then face the direction you want, which is, as always, disappointing. I also encountered a fair bit of jank on both the PSVR 2 and Quest 2 versions of the game, with item collisions causing some erratic behavior, especially when hiding in closets while holding said item, as it would often get caught on closet doors and force me to re-enter and exit them to unstick the item. This also occurs if you get too close to walls while holding items, with other minor issues like the man turning on the spot once he catches you, my hand not letting go of objects or grabbing the knob on the other side of the door, and a host more minor issues that did plague both versions of the game, though the PSVR 2 version did run much smoother overall. I did experience performance dips on the Quest 2, which caused weird ghosting and artifacting in the headset, which made the game unplayable at times, and honestly, once I got a hold of the PSVR 2 version, I couldn't go back to the standalone one. That leads me to the presentation, which, on the Quest 2, isn't anything special, and while I can see why the game may be struggling to run, as it's tracking all the individual items in the house and the man as he walks through it, it's hard to excuse the performance dips, the pop-in, and the lower quality textures used, which can make this look stark and bland at times. Everything is very cartoonish, but on the Quest 2 it's all dumbed down with a lack of dynamic lighting, minus your flashlight, and the muddy textures often fooling me into thinking something was just part of the scenery when it was actually a pivotal thing I needed to interact with in some way. I don't want to spoil where and when this happened, but on at least 2 occasions, I straight up thought an item was just part of the scenery until the game revealed its interactivity, or in one case, when I looked up how the item was used in the flat game, which actually got me past that early part of the game. Where this led me though was to try and grab and whack everything I could, as I now wasn't sure where my next key or clue may be hidden, and while much of the house isn't interactive, many items are, but serve no purpose, though the only way to tell that is by grabbing what I could and looking around to see if a reticle pops up that indicates what I was holding could be used somewhere. I don't want to slam the Quest 2 version too much here, as it's not broken, but it does contain enough visual shortcomings that add more obstacles to what can at times already be a frustrating game. Now, as for the PSVR 2 version, like I said, once I got a hold of it, I never looked back. Outside of a smoother experience is a graphical upgrade that isn't leaps and bounds ahead of the Quest 2, but adds enough details, assets, and cleaner textures that just make quite literally everything in here look better. Reflections of light on doorknobs, glowing effects on those coins, a magnifying glass that actually magnifies, and tons of improvements all add layers to the PSVR 2 version that the Quest 2 is missing. There's way less pop-in, and the clarity of the textures and even better balancing in the ambient lighting allowed for easier views of the house and the stuff inside it, essentially making it easier to see and solve obstacles that require a closer eye. Is it the best looking game for the PSVR 2? Not even close. But compared to the Quest, it shines, and is the version I recommend people play, if they play it at all. When it comes to stealth games, audio is probably one of the most important aspects of the genre, as it's critical to know where your enemies are, and in Hello Neighbor, this is a mixed bag. Spatial audio is used, and it's relatively easy to hear which direction the man may be in, but I found it impossible to tell if he was above or below me, forcing me to use the various distractions around the house to guarantee I knew where he would be next. It's absolutely maddening to think that you're safe, only to hear that tense tune kick in, letting you know that he's seen you, and that unless there's a closet out of sight nearby, you're caught. There's a light soundtrack at play here, though it typically falls into the background, letting these sounds of the house be your guide, with little else going on, as the kids and man only utter singular grunts, groans, or exclamations, if anything at all. Search and rescue, regardless of the headset, is honestly a mixed bag of fun and unique puzzles, marred by some obtuse choices that ruin that fun. I did enjoy parts of this, and when I was on a roll, navigating through and around obstacles that challenged me, it was great. However, there are enough hiccups in the Quest 2 version that held me up enough that I almost quit out of frustration on a few occasions. The PSVR 2 version does fare better, but it's still fraught with issues that make the asking price for this feel a little high. There is enjoyment to be had here for sure, but it's just as annoying, and I expect people who have never played this franchise to wonder what all the fuss is about in the first place. I know I am. I'm going to give the PSVR 2 version of Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue a 6.5 out of 10, and the Quest 2 version a 5.5 out of 10. Here's hoping the devs fix some of these issues, because I think right now, it's more trouble than it's worth. If you enjoyed this review, hit that like button, and that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching.